She thought claiming the mountain sealed her fate, but fate wasn't finished with her. Because the night the bond awakened, something else awakened with it. Something ancient. Something hungry. Something coming for her. The night everything changed began like most impossible love stories do, with blood, secrets, and a choice nobody wanted to make. If you love werewolf romance with heart-pounding suspense, hit that subscribe button and like this video, because this story is about to take you on a ride you won't forget. Nova Ashford was nobody, just a girl from the lower villages, raised by a grandmother who whispered warnings about the wolves in the mountains and the alphas who ruled them. Every night before sleep, the old woman told stories, tales of powerful shifters, ancient bloodlines, and the mountain that chose its queens. Nova thought they were just stories, the kind you tell children to keep them from wandering too close to the forest's edge. She was wrong. The summons came on her 21st birthday, a single black envelope sealed with silver wax, bearing the mark of Blackcrest Castle. Her hands shook as she broke the seal, and her grandmother's face went pale as moonlight when she read the words inside. "You've been called to the claiming ceremony," the old woman whispered, her voice breaking on every syllable. "Nova, you have to run. You have to leave tonight." But Nova didn't run. Maybe she should have. Maybe everything would be different if she had. But something in her chest pulled tight when she held that letter, something that felt like recognition, like destiny reaching out with invisible fingers and saying, "Finally, we've been waiting for you." The claiming ceremony happened once every generation. When an alpha king needed a mate, the mountain itself would choose candidates from across the territories. They said the mountain had magic older than memory, that it could see into your soul and know if you carried the strength to stand beside a king. They said it never chose wrong. They also said most of the chosen never returned. Nova arrived at Blackcrest Castle 3 days later, along with 29 other women. They were a mix of nobles and commoners, warriors and scholars, each of them marked by the mountain's call in ways they didn't understand. The castle rose from the cliffs like a crown of stone and shadow, its towers piercing the clouds, its walls thick enough to hold back armies, or keep secrets buried. The first time Nova saw Alaric Ravenwood, she forgot how to breathe. He stood on the dais in the great hall, and every eye in that massive room was locked on him. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of kingdoms. His hair was dark as a raven's wing, falling to his collar in waves that caught the torchlight. But it was his eyes that stopped hearts. Silver blue, like winter ice struck by lightning. Eyes that had seen centuries of war and loss and power. Eyes that looked at each woman like he could see straight through flesh and bone into the truth they kept hidden. "Welcome to Blackcrest," he said, and his voice rolled through the hall like distant thunder. Deep, commanding, the kind of voice that made wolves bow and enemies surrender. "You've been called here because the mountain has sensed something in each of you, a strength, a fire, a piece of what our kingdom needs." He stepped down from the dais, moving through their ranks with the grace of a predator. When he passed Nova, the air shifted, got warmer, heavier, like the space between them crackled with electricity she couldn't name. "The claiming ceremony will test everything you are," Alaric continued. "Your courage, your loyalty, your will to survive. Some of you won't make it to the end. Some of you will break. And one of you, if the mountain wills it, will become my queen." Nova's stomach twisted. Queen! She couldn't even imagine it. She was a village girl who helped her grandmother with healing herbs and read books by candlelight. She didn't belong in a castle. She didn't belong beside a king. But the mountain had called her. And something in Alaric's eyes, when they met hers for just a heartbeat, made her think maybe she didn't have a choice in this anymore. The trials began at dawn. The first test was survival. They sent the women into the northern forest, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a single instruction: reach the mountain peak before sunset, or forfeit your claim. The forest was dense and cold, filled with shadows that moved wrong and sounds that made instincts scream danger. Wolves hunted those woods. Real wolves and shifter wolves, the kind that could tear you apart before you even saw them coming. Nova ran. God, she ran until her lungs burned and her legs trembled. But she wasn't fast enough. Halfway up the mountain path, she heard them. Paws pounding against frozen earth. Growls rumbling through the trees. 3 massive wolves. Their eyes glowing amber in the half-light, circling her like she was prey. She should have been terrified. Should have frozen or screamed or tried to run again. But something strange happened instead. Something she still didn't fully understand. Heat exploded in her chest. Not panic, power. It rolled through her like a wave of fire and lightning, spreading down her arms until her fingertips tingled. The wolves stopped mid-circle, their ears flattening back, their growls faltering into confused whines. They could feel it too. Whatever had just awakened inside her, it spoke a language older than words. The largest wolf, a massive black beast with scars across its muzzle, shifted. Bones cracked and reformed, fur melted into skin, and suddenly a man stood there instead. One of Alaric's warriors. His eyes were wide with something close to fear. "What are you?" he breathed. Nova didn't have an answer. She didn't know. But she reached the peak before sunset, and when she stumbled into the clearing where the other survivors waited, Alaric was there, watching her, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, those silver blue eyes, burned with an intensity that made her heart stutter. "Interesting," he murmured as she passed. Just that one word, but it felt like a promise and a threat wrapped together. The second trial was loyalty. They separated the women into pairs and gave them a choice: betray your partner to advance, or stand together and risk elimination. Nova's partner was a noble girl named Ilara, all sharp cheekbones and sharper ambition. She looked at Nova like she was an obstacle to remove. "This is easy," Ilara said when they were alone. "You're a commoner. You don't belong here. Walk away now, and compensation will be arranged for your trouble." Nova could have done it, could have stepped aside and let her win. But something in her, that same heat that had stopped the wolves, flared again, not with anger, with certainty. "No," she said quietly. "We both move forward, or neither of us does." Ilara laughed. Actually laughed. "You're a fool." Maybe she was. But when the trial began, when they were thrown into a flooded cavern and told to retrieve a token from the depths, Nova didn't hesitate. She dove deep, found the token wedged between rocks, and brought it up. Not just for herself, for both of them. Ilara stared at her when Nova surfaced, water streaming down her face, the token in her outstretched hand. "Why?" she whispered. "The favor would not have been returned." "Perhaps not," Nova said. "But that doesn't change what's right." They both advanced. And that night, when the remaining candidates gathered in the Great Hall, Alaric's eyes found Nova across the room. He didn't smile. Alphas like him didn't smile easily, but something in his gaze softened. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. The third trial was the one that changed everything. They called it the Soul Walk. The women had to enter the mountain itself, not just climb it, but go deep into its ancient caves, where the old magic still pulsed. The mountain would show them visions, they said. Truths about themselves they'd buried or forgotten. Only those who could face their darkest fears and deepest shames would emerge worthy. Nova went in with 5 other women. Only 3 came out. The mountain showed her things she'd tried to forget. Her parents' deaths when she was 8, the fever that took them both within days of each other. Her grandmother's tears as she raised Nova alone, never letting the girl see how much it cost her. The loneliness Nova had wrapped around herself like armor, convinced she'd always be on the outside looking in. But it showed her something else too, something that made no sense. She saw herself as a child, maybe 4 or 5 years old, standing in a forest clearing she didn't recognize. A woman knelt before her, beautiful, with silver hair and eyes that glowed like moonlight. She pressed something into the small girl's hands, a pendant, silver and intricately carved with symbols that couldn't be read. "Remember who you are," the woman whispered in the vision. "When the time comes, remember." Then she faded. And Nova was left holding nothing but questions. When she emerged from the mountain, gasping and shaking, Alaric was there waiting. He caught her as her legs gave out, his arms strong and steady around her waist. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice rough. She looked up at him, and for the first time, she let herself really see him. Not as an alpha king or a figure of power, but as a man. A man with shadows in his eyes and scars on his soul. A man who'd lost things too. "Something about who the girl in the vision was," she whispered, "or who she was supposed to be." His jaw tightened. "The mountain shows us what we need to see, even when we don't want to know." "What did it show you?" she dared to ask. He was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "You," he said simply. "It showed me you." Her breath caught. "That makes no sense." "Neither does this." His hand came up, fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face, with a gentleness that contradicted everything anyone knew about alphas. "But it's starting to." By the final trial, only 4 remained: Nova, Ilara, and 2 warrior women from the Eastern Territories, Kira and Thane. The last test was simple in instruction, brutal in execution. They had to face Alaric himself in combat. Not to win. That would be impossible against an alpha of his power. But to prove they wouldn't break under pressure. To show they had the strength to stand beside him when kingdoms fell and enemies rose. Ilara fought first. She was vicious, all calculated strikes and cold precision. She lasted 3 minutes before Alaric disarmed her. Kira went next. Pure warrior, all raw strength and fearless aggression. She lasted 5 minutes. Thane fought with a combination of both. 7 minutes before she yielded. Then it was Nova's turn. She stepped into the ring, and Alaric's eyes locked on hers. That same intensity, that same heat she'd felt since the moment she arrived. "Don't hold back," he said quietly. "There will be no quarter given." He didn't lie. He came at her like a storm, fast, powerful, overwhelming. She dodged the first strike by instinct, rolled under the second. But he was too fast, too experienced. Within seconds he had her pinned, his body pressed against hers, her back against the cold stone floor. "Yield," he commanded. She should have. Every logical part of her screamed to yield. But that heat, that power that had been building inside her through every trial, exploded outward. Light, blinding. White-hot light burst from her chest. Alaric staggered back with a shocked curse, and Nova scrambled to her feet. Her hands were glowing. Actually glowing. Silver light pulsed beneath her skin, like lightning trapped in flesh. The entire hall fell silent. "What?" she started, but the words died. Because Alaric was staring at her, with an expression she couldn't name. Awe, recognition, and something that looked almost like fear. "The bloodline," he breathed. "You carry the ancient bloodline." "That's not possible." "Your pendant," he said urgently, his eyes dropping to her neck. "Where did you get that pendant?" She touched it instinctively, the silver pendant she'd worn since childhood, the one her grandmother had given her, the one from her vision. "My grandmother! She said it belonged to my mother." Alaric moved closer, his movements careful, like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. "That's not just any pendant, Nova. That's the lunar seal. It hasn't been seen in over 200 years. It belongs to the ancient line, the first wolves, the ones who built these kingdoms before they vanished from history." Her head spun. "That's impossible. She was nobody." Just a village girl. No. His hand cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You're not nobody. You never were. The mountain didn't call you here by chance, Nova. It called you home. The words crashed over her like a wave. Home. How could this castle, this kingdom, this impossible destiny be home? But even as she questioned it, something deep inside her stirred. Recognized. Knew. The mountain has made its choice, Alaric said, his voice carrying through the hall so everyone could hear. Nova Ashford is my chosen mate, my queen. The world tilted. Queen. The girl who'd arrived here weeks ago with nothing but questions and fear, now wearing the weight of a crown she didn't understand. But when Alaric looked at her, really looked at her, she saw something beyond the Alpha King, beyond the power and the territory and the duty. She saw a man who'd been waiting, searching, hoping for someone who could stand beside him not as a trophy or a tool, but as an equal, a partner, a mate in the truest sense. Will you accept? He asked quietly. Just for her? She should have been terrified, should have run like her grandmother had begged her to. Instead, she heard herself whisper, yes. The bond snapped into place the moment the word left her lips. It wasn't gentle. It was fire and lightning, and something so primal breathing became impossible. Nova felt Alaric's heartbeat in her chest, his emotions bleeding into hers, relief, desire, possession, and underneath it all, a love so fierce it terrified her. Because this wasn't new love. This was ancient. Like their souls had been searching for each other across lifetimes. Nova, he breathed, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss stole everything, breath, thoughts, fears. His hands tangled in her hair, his body pressed against hers, and she tasted centuries of loneliness finally breaking. This was what the mountain had known, what fate had written, what neither of them could have fought even if they'd wanted to. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. This is forever, he whispered. You understand that? Once the bond is complete, there's no going back. Your soul is mine is yours, until death and beyond. The choice has been made, she said. And she meant it. Somehow, she'd always known. The bonding ceremony happened 3 days later. The entire kingdom gathered at the mountain's peak. Thousands of wolves from every territory, all come to witness their king claim his queen. The moon hung full and heavy above them, bathing everything in silver light. Ancient words were spoken, vows were made, and when Alaric bit into Nova's shoulder, marking her, binding her, the mountain itself seemed to sing. Power rushed through her, his power, her power. Both merged into something new, something stronger. She felt every wolf in attendance through the pack bonds, felt the weight of leadership and responsibility settling onto her shoulders like a mantle. But she also felt love. Pure, overwhelming, unshakable love. My queen, Alaric murmured against her skin, his voice rough with emotion. My mate, my everything. Forever, she whispered back. The celebration lasted until dawn. Music and laughter and joy filled Blackcrest Castle in ways it hadn't seen in years. Alaric never let Nova stray far from his side, his hand always finding hers, his eyes always tracking her movements, like he still couldn't quite believe she was real. When they finally escaped to his chambers, their chambers now, he pulled her close and just held her. No rush, no urgency, just the solid comfort of being together. Are you afraid? He asked after a long silence. She thought about it. Thought about everything that had changed, everything she'd become, everything she still didn't understand about her bloodline and destiny. Not when we're together, she said honestly. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face, made him look younger, softer. Good, because what comes next won't be easy. What do you mean? His smile faded. There are those who won't accept you as queen, who'll see your common birth as weakness, your ancient bloodline as threat. There are enemies in the shadows, Nova, enemies that have been fought for years, and now they'll come for you too. Let them come, she said with more bravery than she felt. You're not alone in this. No, he agreed, pulling her closer. Not anymore. They made love that night with a tenderness that surprised her. She'd expected passion, and there was plenty of that. But underneath it ran something deeper, a reverence, like they were both learning the map of each other's souls through touch and breath and whispered promises. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Nova felt safe for the first time since her parents died. Like she'd finally found the place she was meant to be. If only she'd known how quickly that safety would shatter. The first sign of trouble came a week later. One of the outer territories reported attacks. Not by rogues or rival packs, but by something else. Something that killed with a brutality that suggested intelligence and purpose. Entire families slaughtered. Alphas found torn apart in ways that suggested the attacker knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum pain. Alaric increased security, doubled patrols, called in his most trusted warriors. But the attacks continued, getting closer, moving in a pattern that made skin crawl because it was obvious. Whatever was doing this was heading toward Blackcrest, toward Nova. There's something you need to see, Althea said one evening. Althea was Alaric's advisor, an ancient wolf with silver hair and eyes that saw too much. She'd been kind to Nova since she arrived, teaching her the history and politics she needed to survive as queen. But tonight, her expression was grave. She led Nova to the castle archives, deep underground where the oldest records were kept. Dust covered everything, and the air smelled of age and secrets. Your bloodline isn't just ancient, Althea said, pulling out a leather-bound tome. It's cursed. Nova's stomach dropped. What? The first wolves, the ones who built these kingdoms, they made a pact with the mountain. Power in exchange for protection. But one line betrayed that pact. They tried to take more power than they were given, tried to control the magic itself. The mountain struck them down, scattered their line, and set a curse that would follow their descendants. She opened the book, showing Nova illustrations of wolves twisted by dark magic, their forms corrupted, their minds broken. The fallen, Althea whispered. Alphas who were corrupted by the curse, who became monsters. They were hunted down, destroyed, their names erased from history. We thought they were all gone. But they're not, Nova said, understanding dawning with cold horror. No, and your bloodline, the power you carry, it's what they want. They think if they consume an heir of the ancient line, they can break their curse, become whole again. That's what's been attacking the territories, Nova breathed. A fallen alpha. Yes, and it knows you're here. Nova told Alaric everything that night, watched his face go hard and cold as he processed the threat. But when he looked at her, his eyes were gentle. We'll face this together, he said firmly. Whatever comes, we face it together. Alaric, if they're coming for me, maybe leaving would draw them away from— No, the word was absolute. You're not leaving. You're not running. You're my mate, my queen, and no curse or monster or ancient evil is taking you from me. Understood? Despite everything, she smiled. Understood. He pulled her close, and she felt his fear through the bond. Not for himself. Alpha Kings didn't fear death. But for her. The thought of losing her terrified him in ways nothing else could. You are loved, he said quietly, more than words can express. More than anything. The feeling is mutual, she whispered back. So much it's terrifying. Good. Fear keeps us sharp, keeps us alive. That night, Nova dreamed. Not a normal dream, a vision. She stood in a forest clearing, and the woman from her childhood vision appeared again. The one with silver hair and moonlight eyes. "Nova," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "The time has come. You must remember what you are, what you carry." "Who are you?" Nova demanded. "Why do these visions keep coming?" "Lunara, first queen, first of your line. And the power you carry, the light that burns in your blood, is the only thing that can stop what's coming." "The fallen Alpha is only the beginning," Lunara cut in. "There are more, dozens sleeping in the deep places, waiting for someone powerful enough to break their curse. If they succeed, this kingdom will burn. Every kingdom will burn." Terror clawed at Nova's throat. How does someone fight them? How does anyone understand what this even is? "The pendant," Lunara said urgently. "The lunar seal. It's not just a symbol, it's a key. It unlocks the power in your blood, the magic the mountain gave to our line." "But Nova," her expression turned grave. "Using it comes at a cost." "What cost?" "Every time you channel the ancient power, you risk the same corruption that created the fallen. The magic is seductive, hungry. It wants to consume you. You must be stronger than it, stronger than the curse." "How?" "Love," she said simply. "The bond you share with your mate. That's what grounds you. As long as you hold to that, the darkness can't claim you." She started to fade. "Wait!" Nova cried. "There has to be more. You'll know when the time comes. Trust the mountain, trust yourself. And Nova," she looked at the young queen with such sadness, "this burden shouldn't fall on you, but it has, and you're strong enough to carry it." Then she was gone, and Nova woke gasping. Alaric held her as she told him everything. His jaw was tight, his eyes dark with worry, but he didn't tell her she was wrong or crazy. He just listened. "We'll figure this out," he said when she finished. "Whatever power you have, whatever you need to face, we do it together." "What if it can't be controlled? What if—" "You won't become like them." His certainty was absolute. "Your heart, your soul. The darkness doesn't stand a chance against who you are." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. The attack came 2 nights later. They were on the balcony, Alaric and Nova, watching the stars and pretending for just a moment that they were normal, that they weren't a king and queen preparing for war, that they were just 2 people in love. Then the wind shifted. Softly at first, so subtle a human ear would have missed it. But Nova wasn't fully human anymore. The bond had changed her, awakened senses she didn't know she possessed. She felt the warning the way wolves feel tremors before a storm. Danger. Coming fast. Alaric's arms tightened around her. "You feel it too," he murmured. "Yes." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Something is wrong." A howl rose from the forest below. Low, drawn out, layered with a sound that didn't belong to any pack they knew. It was deeper, older, rumbling with a hunger that tasted like grave soil and frost. The fallen Alpha had arrived. "Get inside," Alaric commanded, his voice dropping into the tone that led armies. "Now." But Nova couldn't move. Her body reacted before thought, tremors running along her spine, her breathing caught in the strange pull of that howl. It reached into her ribs and plucked something buried deep. Something in her. Her pendant scorched against her skin, pulsing with heat so intense she gasped. It glowed fierce white beneath her dress. "No," Alaric breathed. "Not now. Alaric, what's happening?" "The bond has awakened more than just us," he said grimly. Power rolled through her. Sharp, ancient, primal. It tasted like wild earth and moonlight and blood. "What is that howl?" she managed. "What's coming?" His silence stretched just long enough to turn fear solid. "A fallen Alpha," he finally whispered. "One of the first wolves. One that should have died 1,000 years ago." He cupped her face gently, despite the chaos rising. They don't return for kingdoms. They don't return for war. They return for bloodlines. Understanding hit her like ice water. It's here for me. Yes. The third howl came from inside the castle walls. Screams erupted from the courtyard. Armor clattered. A guard shouted an order, only to be silenced by a wet, slicing sound. The beast had breached Black Crest. "Someone open the gates," Alaric said grimly. "Another traitor." Nova's stomach plunged. The war they thought they'd won was just beginning. Alaric grabbed her hand and pulled her through the corridors. Guards raced past, some shifting mid-run. The air tasted of adrenaline and fear. Then she saw it. A shape at the far end of the hall. Too big, too fast, too wrong. The fallen alpha was a twisted nightmare. A wolf corrupted by dark magic. Its fur slick like oil, its eyes glowing sick white. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to get as far from this thing as possible. But Nova's pendant flared, sending a shockwave through her chest that forced her forward instead. The creature stopped mid-run, turned its head, looked directly at her. Recognition passed between them. It crouched, preparing to spring. Alaric roared and shifted, bones cracking, fur bursting from skin, lunging in front of Nova just as the beast charged. They collided in an explosion of violence. Stone shattered, blood sprayed. The hallway became chaos. "Alaric!" Nova screamed. His wolf form was locked in brutal combat, teeth sinking into the creature's shoulder, while its claws tore across his ribs. Guards tried to help, but were swatted aside like insects. A hand gripped Nova's arm. "Althea." "Nova, you must not approach it," she said urgently. "You'll only draw it stronger." "It's here for me. How can anyone just stand here?" "You can do more than stand," Althea said sharply. "You can end this. Your lineage carries what it wants, but that also means your lineage carries what can destroy it." "How?" She placed her hands on either side of Nova's face. "You call the mountain." "What?" "The power you awakened. The bond is only one side of what you are. The mountain is the other. It chose you. It marked you. Now you must answer." The pendant pulsed faster, harder, until something inside Nova stirred, something buried and raw and electric. Heat shot down her arms. The air around her rippled. Her vision sharpened until even individual dust motes became crystal clear. "Good," Althea breathed. "Now aim it, toward the beast." Nova stepped forward, raising a shaking hand. "Hey!" Her voice cracked through the hall like a whip. The fallen alpha froze. Alaric rolled free, battered and bleeding, but alive. The creature turned toward Nova, those glowing white eyes locking on hers. "Come on," she whispered. "You wanted me?" The pendant flared, blinding white. Light shot outward, splitting shadows. Wind roared through the hall, ripping tapestries from walls. The creature snarled, staggering back under the force. Then its eyes widened. Fear. It recognized the power, the lineage, the thing inside her older than its curse. "Don't let it break your focus!" Alaric shouted, half wolf, half man. The beast lunged. Instinct moved Nova. She thrust her hand outward. The light detonated. A shockwave slammed the creature into the far wall, cracking stone, shaking the entire castle. It hit the ground dazed, its monstrous body writhing. Then it fled, vanishing into the shadows of the inner keep. Alaric shifted back, panting, blood streaking his torso. He staggered toward Nova, his hand cupping the back of her neck, his forehead pressing to hers. "You just faced a creature that terrified even the old kings," he breathed. Her knees weakened. "It's not gone. It's hunting inside the castle." "And we will hunt it," he said fiercely. Together. The bond pulsed between them, warm, solid, alive. He lifted her chin, forcing her eyes to meet his. "Do you understand now? Why the mountain chose you?" Her chest tightened with the weight of understanding. She wasn't simply a chosen mate, she was something else. Something the fallen alpha feared. Something the mountain itself had awakened. And this terrifying, exhilarating, impossible destiny, was only the beginning of what hunted them in the darkness. The war for their kingdom, for their love, for their very souls had just begun. And Nova Ashford, the girl who thought she was nobody, would have to become the queen they all needed her to be, before the darkness consumed them all. Subscribe and like for the next chapter, because this is only the beginning of what hunts them, and the secrets buried in Nova's bloodline are about to change everything.